Welcome to podcast 23 in the series of Who Let the Master Out. In this episode, we are going to look at who we are before we're born, who we are after we die, and a little bit about the in-between. So we'll start with the before. Souls have been traveling to Earth to conduct experiments for centuries. And when you look at this physical plane as a place for learning and experiencing, it makes sense that souls would be intrigued by all the possibilities here and would want to come back again and again. Kind of like a vacation spot you really enjoy. You might want to return to it several times, but choose different adventures each visit. And so it is here. So we gather with groups of souls on the other side before we're born, and it's these souls that we have special connections with that we plan our next trip. We peruse through all the books and brochures and charts to determine the possibilities we could have if we choose to be born on certain dates or in certain places or to certain parents, etc. And we can see what characters we could end up playing by all these choices. We also decide ahead of time whether in this lifetime we will choose to wake up from this amnesia we induce at birth to forget this powerful being that we really are. And if we do choose to observe unconditional love next to all these conditional love experiences while we're in these bodies, then we schedule the time and place where we will start to wake up. And we never wake up before that time. We make joint agreements with all those other souls, and we determine that this is what we will do. Generally, it is an improv play, after all. Then we gather around a giant table, and we begin to assign character parts in this play. And because we are such unconditionally loving beings on the other side, when it comes down to delegating the parts of villains, those catalysts for fear, and those that are going to help us create those extreme, uncomfortable emotions, some of us don't jump immediately at those parts. But eventually, love always wins. Because on the other side, we know that this is really just one big game in one big classroom. It isn't really real. So we will choose to play those parts for each other. Because after all, we want to come here to experience these uncomfortable emotions. And so we need our cohorts in crime to help us with that. So after all that is done, then we all settle in and get comfortable. The forget who you are potion is passed around, and we make a toast, and we down it all. And then suddenly, we're slapped awake, crying out in the physical world, ready for our new adventure, being slapped on our booty as we're born. Well, let's talk about the after. When we move past the lives we live here, we look at what happens after we die. And this is where a lot of our fear is rooted. I talk about this in my book and podcast series of Coming Back from Fear, so I won't rehash it all right now. But if you're interested, just check that out there. At the end of our physical lives, we remember who we really are back home. And as we detach from this physical body, it stops working. Much like turning off the engine of a car we have been driving. It just stops. We step out of the vehicle and re-enter our real home. All our family and friends are there. They knew we were scheduled to arrive at this particular time, so they prepared a welcome home party, greeting us with hugs and high fives. And then we all sit down and we share the tales of each of our adventures. And on the other side, we have this amazing ability to see and feel all the stories and senses each of us have felt while we were on Earth. In fact, we can even do that while we're here, but we'll talk about that in some future podcasts. But ultimately, witnessing others' experiences is not as intense or tasty as living it ourselves in the physical plane, and that is what draws us to come here. We are not sad on the other side. We are not in pain. We do not feel loss. There's no time or space back yonder. And after an extensive, glorious review of the lives we have lived here, we check back in with all those other souls who are still living here, those that we left behind. Not a second of time passes from the moment we step out of our bodies and return back to snoop into the lives of our loved ones. We visit them, giving them unconditional love energy, and whispering encouraging words and silly things to them. Lights may flicker. They may feel a tickle or a breath on their neck. They might find a penny or an object that reminds them of us. We never leave them. We watch and support their journey without any judgment for what they're doing. They're still in the game. They're experiencing. And we get to add to their experience in our invisible form. Now, there are individuals who have agreed to awaken earlier and more intensely while they're still living here in their physical bodies for the purpose of helping others to awaken while they're still in their physical bodies. I call these individuals wake-up artists. And we all could have volunteered for this opportunity, so no one is any more special than anyone else. It's just a role that someone chose to play in this particular lifetime. And if you're not playing that role in this lifetime, maybe you did it last lifetime, or maybe you're going to do it next lifetime. So it's just a role that we choose like any other character. But souls who are back home, who wish to communicate with people on Earth, can go to wake-up artists to give them messages for their loved ones. And they have this ability to communicate because they have learned to turn down their fears so they can hear those whispers of love from those who have passed and on the other side. So if an individual has not opened up to hear from those loved ones from the other side, then these wake-up artists act as kind of little in-between communicators until the other person is aware of that. And in order for souls still on Earth to remember who we are when we visit them from the other side, we don't usually present ourselves as the higher being we are back home, or they wouldn't recognize us as these such loving beings. So in the beginning, we usually present ourselves as the character we played while we were here, so they know it is us. So all our little quirky things we had stand out to these individuals. Then, if we choose, we begin to lead our loved ones into a deeper relationship with our true soul, showing them the powerful spirit being we are back home, while also helping them to awaken to who they really are. Death doesn't seem as frightening when we realize our lives continue after we leave this vehicle. This knowledge can also lessen our sadness when a loved one leaves this physical plane, because even though they are not here, they are not gone. So let's talk a little bit about the in-between. When we can look back to our birth and take one step further behind it, or look forward to our physical death and take one step beyond it, we see that everything will be okay. It will be more than okay. We came here to experience all the uncomfortable emotions rooted in fear in order to understand more about the unconditionally loving beings we really are. In contrast, allows us to see the breadth, height, and depth of our souls. Fear is not our enemy. It's actually our employee. We hired our fear ego to guide us through this amazing adventure park of fear. At first, we may feel a bit miffed at the fear ego when we realize that it has been intentionally driving us into all sorts of adventures in fear. But eventually, we're shown a video recorded before we took our Forget Who We Are potion, and we remember that we specifically agreed to a list of all these things we chose to experience here, and we signed the waiver and the authorization. Though, when we realize we have asked for everything that has happened in our lives, it transforms our lives from one of victimhood into one of adventure. It dawns on us that our relationship with the Creator, it's not one of a victim and a rescuer, but one of a young adult and parent. The mother and father of all things is not here to rescue us, but to celebrate us and the life we chose to create for ourselves. Our power of choice is respected and cherished by them. Next episode, we'll talk about the two beings that exist inside us. And we'll also talk about the first time I think I fried my little brain. But until then, break the cycle. Be free. Be big. Because we're giants in a world of giants who've been taught that we're weak and that we're small. But it's time to rise. It's time to let your master out.